Hey guys, we are rolling through the month. And here at Conversations with Christians Engaged, we're actually playing remarks and speeches and panels and discussions that we had at last year's Christians Engaged conference. Every year we have a national conference. We talk about pray, vote, and engage. We have ministry leaders, government leaders, all come together. We pray, we worship, we have ministry time. It's amazing. I'm going to be speaking. Coach Joe Kennedy, and Denise Kennedy of the landmark case that went all the way to the Supreme Court to protect our religious liberty. If you don't remember, Coach Joe Kennedy knelt and prayed at the 50-yard line in Washington State. And his ISD, his independent school district, fired him for privately praying on the 50-yard line. Well, what a lot of people didn't know is his wife was actually the HR department that had to fire her own husband. It's a crazy story. Joe and Denise Kennedy will be with us at the conference. I'm going to interview them on the stage at our conference, September 27 and 28. But right now, I want to play for you the man who led that fight. The president and CEO of First Liberty Institute, Kelly Shackelford. Kelly's been on our national advisory board for many, many years. I'm so thankful for Kelly's friendship. He has supported my career, my life, endorsed me when I ran for Congress in 2018. He's been such a blessing to me and to this ministry and given us a lot of credibility, really, for a lot of years. One of our key ministries that we partner with day to day is First Liberty Institute. They go on the road with us when we have on-ramp seminars. They are actively involved in Christians Engaged, and we're actively involved with them. We're so thankful for them. Kelly's going to lay out in this speech from last year's conference how we have more religious liberty in this nation than we have ever had because of Coach Joe Kennedy and Denise Kennedy and their faithfulness to not just sit on the sidelines and let some school district tell them that they can pray or not pray in public. It's time for the church to rise up. And Kelly is going to give you the firepower to do that. He's going to lay out to you how the Lemon test was overturned in this case, landmark case, and why this is providing more religious liberty than we've ever seen before. Have you seen news stories about the 10 Commandments going back on the walls of schools or Bible clubs or Bible teachings being back in schools in different places? That's part of the victory here. Part of the victory is that we have more freedom than we've ever had because of First Liberty Institute, Kelly Shackelford, and Coach Joe Kennedy. So watch this amazing speech by Kelly from last year, and then I'll see you on the back end. Welcome to the Conversations with Christians Engaged podcast. I'm your host, Bunni Pounds, the president of Christians Engaged. This ministry exists to awaken, motivate, educate, and empower ordinary believers in Jesus Christ to do three things: to pray for our elected officials and our nation regularly, to vote in every election to impact our culture, and to engage in some form of civic education or involvement for the well-being of our nation.
I'm so thankful, Bunni, for what you do. A lot of people talk the talk, but you really walk the walk.
There's nobody else I want to talk to about Jesus with than you.
And I will stand and lock arms with this woman of God, Bunni Pounds, any day of the week.
Bunni, you are a new hero of mine.
And I'm 100% behind something that Bunni Pounds is doing. Encourage her, pray for her, and be involved. Be part of Christians actively engaged.
America is worth it. Now is the time. America needs your involvement. Please take our pledge to pray, vote, and engage. Join with a movement of other Christians that are doing these three simple things that can really impact this nation. Join us.
This has been just an unbelievable couple of years. I mean, we just had 4 wins at the Supreme Court in 13 months. Just unheard of. And I want to go into that, but I know there's people that don't even know what First Liberty is, so let me start there. First Liberty is the largest legal organization in the country that all we do is religious freedom. So let's say you're a 10-year-old boy and your name is Giovanni Rubio, and you're told you can bring any book you want during free reading time, and then you bring your Bible. And you're told, oh, you can't bring that book and read during free. And you're a poor family, you live outside of Miami-Dade County, what do? You can't exactly pull out a couple $100,000, hire a great legal team. So we bring in the best litigators in the country who all donate their time, so that when Giovanni wins his case, which he did, he doesn't just win for Giovanni, but that's a precedent that protects all of our kids and our grandkids. And that's a quick summary of First Liberty. But I always like to start out with, why is this important? Why is religious freedom important? Because what I find is people of faith especially think, well, it's important because I want to be able to live out my faith. It's so much bigger than that. Religious freedom is our first freedom, and the founders called it that because they understood if you lose this freedom, you will lose all of your freedoms. And I have people come up to me all the time as I speak around the country from other countries, especially Eastern European bloc countries, but they come up and they say, look, I'm not a person of faith, but I think that what you guys are doing is the most important thing anybody's doing in this country. And they tell me the story of how the religious symbols were taken down, and 2 months later they lost their political freedoms, their economic freedoms, everything. And so the best way I can describe is why this is the case is the one thing that a totalitarian regime will never allow are citizens who hold an allegiance to one higher than the government. So whenever you see oppression coming in, you will always see the first flashpoint being religious freedom. And if you lose at that point, you'll lose all of your freedoms. So that being the case, how are we doing in the United States? I probably don't have to convince you that, things aren't too well as far as the attacks. And I'm going to tell you about just very recent cases we've got, because I can't go through 300 to 600 cases. But because you wouldn't believe me, I'm going to show you a video of the first one. And that is a woman who, at the school board, they were having a controversy about accountability and different things. And she decided, there's never going to be a chance of resolving this if we don't come together. So she decides to come and to have a prayer during her time of speech. And she's told by the school board she's not allowed to pray at a school board meeting. And then the crowd breaks out into the Lord's Prayer on their own. And the school board chair ends the meeting and then tells the police officers to clear the room. And this is not a communist country. It's one of our states. It's Virginia. So watch this video so you'll believe me, and then we'll look at a couple others.
We have to work together to do this. So I would like to ask, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to pray for Suffolk Public Schools with all of you. If you'd like to take a moment, bow your heads, please. Anybody objects? I apologize.
We can't do that.
Why can't we? I like to pray for our students in our school.
That's not in what you signed up to do, ma'am.
Well, it's in regards to all of this. It's a transparency, accountability. I'm praying that we do that.
Ma'am, no, ma'am. We ask that you get back onto your topic. No one.
That is my topic, sir.
Well, then it's not permitted at this time.
To pray for our schools is not permitted.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So now, each of you hear this. If anybody would like to pray with me after the meeting outside, I'd invite you, because I think that that's the only way that we're going to come together is through God and our faith.
I believe that man should always pray. I mean, I love prayer, but this is not the place per the law. And we're going to ask Attorney Waller if you could speak to it.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
At this time, we're going to go to recess.
Ask the officers to remove it.
Officers, during recess, can you clear the room?
So you think, well, gosh, you just found one really weird case. Oh no. We also represent Heather Rooks. Heather was somebody who was concerned about the school board, decided to, because her kids go to school there, and she couldn't believe what she was watching. So she ran for school board and she won. Every school board member at the school board meeting gets a small amount of time, a few minutes, to talk about whatever they want to talk about. Well, she opened her time with a scripture verse. She has been ordered by the school district and the attorney to never mention a scripture verse again, that she's not allowed to in her time of free speech. So we are now in federal district court over whether an elected official who's given a time of free speech can mention a scripture verse. We're also representing Ethan Williams. You think, well, who is Ethan? Well, he's under investigation as the vice principal of a school in Carlsbad. Why? What did he do? He must have done something really bad. It's because he spoke about transgenderism and gave his opinion in his church. They're literally investigating him. And so we've informed them that if they decide to take action, that there will be a nuclear explosion at the school that won't go too well for them legally. Because you can't take away people's First Amendment rights and punish them for what they say in their church. But again, so you can't make up this stuff. But it's not just school board meetings and teachers and parents. It's churches. I mean, we're representing churches around the country. Awaken Church was told that they couldn't rent the Symphony Hall for their Christmas services because they were a church. And, you know, after we explained the law and that they could either follow the law voluntarily or they could have a federal judge help them, they decided the voluntary method was better. And Awaken Church had two 7,000 full events for Christmas. And so many people came to the Lord, they literally couldn't count them. This year they have 7 days scheduled. So we have synagogue cases around the country with synagogues that, I mean, I could tell you a lot of them, but Chabad on the Beaches is probably one of our leading cases on this. This is a facility that sat open for 2.5 years. Nobody wanted to buy it until this Jewish group bought it as their synagogue. And then the city immediately said, we're going to take it by eminent domain. Well, why would you be taking it by eminent domain? Well, because we want to use it to train lifeguards in that building. Well, the federal judge didn't exactly think that that was an emergency enough for the government to take over a worship center from somebody. So we've won, but they've appealed at the Court of Appeals. It's not just schools, and I mean, it's not just synagogues and churches and all these other things. It's also schools. How many of you heard about the Auburn situation recently? Right? What you had at Auburn is you had some students and parents got together the idea of, man, there's a lot of suicide, there's a lot of things happening. Let's get together and have a worship night, and we'll just call it Unite Auburn, and we'll rent one of the facilities, you know, after hours. And that's what they did. 6,000 students showed up. One of the students walks to the bottom at the end, a young lady, and says, hey, I'd like to be baptized. Well, there's no water in the building, so 6,000 students all go out of the building. There's a pond next to that. They have hundreds of students baptized. One of them is on the football team, turns to Coach Hugh Freeze and says, hey, would you baptize me? He said, sure, I would. So the next thing you know, the Freedom from Religion Foundation is sending threatening letters to Auburn saying, you need to take action against Coach Hugh Freeze. Well, Coach Hugh Freeze said, I'm not budging, and we represent him, and Auburn agrees, and so Freedom from Religion Foundation is now going to take a hike. But think of this. I mean, this is what we're hoping will happen around the country, and that gets attacked, right? How dare you have 6,000 kids get together, change their life, a number of them having baptism. So we're having to fight in the schools. We have to fight in the workplace. Endless numbers of cases there. Valerie Klosterman, I think we got a picture of Valerie. 20 years as a physician's assistant, perfect record. University of Michigan comes in and takes over her clinic. And the first thing they do is call her into the DEI, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Office. And she's fired for not having the proper beliefs on transgenderism. They call her evil, they scream at her, they curse at her. Not because of anything she did at the workplace, but because of her religious beliefs. And this has been, multiply this many times over around the country. It's also even in our military. Our most recent case is Jace Yarborough. Well, what did Jace do? Well, Jace's friend was graduating, was retiring from the Air Force. And he was having a private retirement ceremony. And he asked Jace if he would speak at the private retirement ceremony. Jace said, sure, I will. So in that, Jace quotes Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the Christian speaker in the former Soviet Union who was put in a gulag because he criticized his government. Well, Jace mentioned Alexander Solzhenitsyn and said that our government needs to be under control for us to have a great country. So what did our government do? Our government's now punishing Jace for quoting Solzhenitsyn and criticizing his government. So it's like we didn't learn anything from the Soviet Union. Of course, a lot of you know about our Navy SEALs case in the military as well, where they literally were trying to throw out, if they had had their way, 50,000 military families, which would have been a horrible disaster. The Navy SEALs is a great example. These are 35 of our very top warriors. They each were already immune from the COVID. They'd already had it, but they were being forced to take the vaccine. Well, they said, look, we have a religious objection. We're not allowed for different reasons, different faiths. And there's a process you go through. There's a federal law. Well, they just decided they weren't going to follow the process. The military did. And as soon as we got into court, the judge immediately says, you're not even following the law. They issued an injunction, said there's no COVID exception to the United States Constitution, and issued an injunction. We broadened that into a class action to protect every person in the Navy. There were about 5,000 families that were in the process of being thrown out. That then resulted in another lawsuit with a protection of everybody in the Air Force, followed by everybody in the Marines. And fortunately, we saved all these people from being thrown out. Can you imagine? They can't even recruit people right now. And we would have thrown 50,000 families out of the military. And we're in the process of ending that case. Now, some of you are like, hey, Bunny, I thought this guy was good. He's depressing. He's telling me all these bad cases. So let me tell you the good news. The good news is we have a method of dealing with this, and it's working. And it has been working for decades. And that is every nonprofit, left wing, right wing, that's a legal nonprofit, they have the same model. Raise as much money as you can raise. Use that money to hire as many attorneys as you can. Put them in an office in D.C. or L.A. or New York. And then send them out and cover as many cases as you can cover. That is not our model. Our model is there's all these believers who went to law school because they wanted to stand for what was right. And 30 years later, these are the best litigators at the most powerful law firms in the world. And they've done honorable work for their clients, but they've never gotten to do a case for the kingdom. And we go and sit down and we say, look, if we give you everything you need, on our staff are number one in their class from Harvard Law School, Chicago, all the best law schools, all they do is religious freedom. We've got a media division that will come around you. If we bring what you need, are you willing to give yourself and your law firm on one of these cases? They're like, man, I've been waiting 35 years. Sign me up. And you can imagine that first case they get, right? All their talent, all their giftings, everything they've ever learned for the first time in their life lined up with their faith and their love for their country. It's kind of unfair, but at that point we know we have them for the rest of their lives as one of our volunteer attorneys because they're going to do this, keep doing this. So if you were to go through the top 100 law firms in the United States, you'd find most of them don't just donate their time, they will fight each other over who gets to donate their time. The result of this is twofold. My first was my idea. The second was God's idea, which is always better. The first was, I thought, we can get a lot more bang for our buck. Sure enough, average case, every $10,000 we spend, we get $60,000 donated. So it's like a 6-to-1 multiplication of God's resources. But what I didn't count on was the win-loss ratio. And that is, if you look at legal nonprofits, they are created to fight big problems, industry, government, something. If they win 40% of their cases, they're doing really well. They're making a real difference. We now, for 24 years straight, every single year, have won over 90% of our cases. And that's God's favor, but it's also His method. This is His body. I mean, we could put together a team anywhere in the country, a dream team of lawyers in 30 minutes, wherever this is being litigated. And it's because we have the biggest law firm in the country. It's called the Body of Christ. And we have the best lawyers, too. So we should be winning these cases. And so normally I would say, yes, there's more attacks than we've ever seen, but our method is working. All is good. Thank you for letting me be here tonight. But then, about 7 years ago, something started to happen. God started moving. And one of the things He did with us is He called us, you need to get involved with these judges. There's 132 seats open under this new president, Trump. and those have to be filled for life. Well, somebody needs to be vetting this stuff. They need to know everything about the background of these people so that good decisions are made. Well, I think most people in D.C. would tell you at this point, we have the most extensive vetting division of judges in the country. And if you look at the kind of people in the court, dramatic. What's this picture I'm showing you now of judges? Who's the guy with his hand up? He is now a federal judge. He was appointed at age 38. He's now a federal judge the rest of his life. Well, where did he come from? He was an attorney at First Liberty. Who's the guy who's swearing him in? Probably one of the smartest attorneys in the country. Probably will end up on the U.S. Supreme Court. And he was the most active attorney, volunteer attorney in the country on our cases. And you start looking all across the country at these federal judges who are appointed for life, you're going to find a lot of this, a whole lot of this. And that begins to change what happens. So just to explain to you something, there are 8,000 requests a year for the Supreme Court to take your case. They took 59 cases last year. The year before that, there were 8,000 requests. They took 67 cases. If your goal is to have them take one of your cases, that is a dramatically difficult goal, okay? Well, we didn't just have one case at the Supreme Court. We had 4 victories at the Supreme Court in 13 months. Only God could do that. I mean, that is impossible. And so there is a move occurring. It started with the judges. Now it's happening with the cases. What were 3 of these big landmark cases we just won? One was Carson versus Macon, where in the state of Maine, for 130 years, they've allowed parents to pick whatever school that they wanted and use their tax money for that school. Because most of their school districts there don't have public schools. So they could pick a private school, a public school, even an out-of-state private school. Well, they decided after 100 years to change things and say, well, you can pick any school as long as it doesn't teach anything religious. We said, you can't do that. That's religious discrimination. So if they teach math better than the other guys, it doesn't matter because they teach a religion class at the end of the school day. Well, we went to the Supreme Court, and 6-3, the Supreme Court said that is unconstitutional. For now on, all in the future, every state, every city, every county, anywhere there's a school choice program, the parents will have a right to pick a Christian or religious school, and the government can't stop that. Secondly, we had the Groff case, which we just won about 6 months ago. This is a man who came off the mission field, wanted to work at a place where, he wouldn't have to work on the Sabbath because it was a strong belief to him. Sunday was a day he was not supposed to work. So he went to the Postal Service. Great idea until they got Amazon together and said, hey, let's deliver on Sunday. And he said, look, I need a religious accommodation, which is a federal law. They said no. And really, what this case is ultimately about is a standard. 46 years ago, the Supreme Court reinterpreted religious freedom in the workplace in a way that was insane. It was not what the law said. It stripped it away from almost every American. And in this case, we won 9-0 at the U.S. Supreme Court. And that standard has been flipped, and now every American has a high standard of protection of religious freedom in the workplace. And I just want you to think about what that means. Every person who works, all of our kids who work, all of our grandkids, the future, this is a huge, huge victory for religious freedom. And then the third is a case you know about, and that's the Coach Kennedy case. Of course, Coach Kennedy had promised to the Lord that after every game he would go to a knee and say a prayer. And that's what he did for 7 years until the school came to him and said, if you go to a knee again, we're going to fire you. Well, he made a promise to the Lord. He went to a knee and they fired him. And again, I think most of you know, 7 years of litigation later, we won at the U.S. Supreme Court, a 6-3 decision, and Coach has a right to go to a knee and say a prayer after every game, and every coach has that right around the country, and that's what most people know. What they don't know is what happened within the decision, and that is there's a case called Lemon, because we have an establishment clause. The founders did not want us to establish a national church, but 50 years ago, in the Lemon case, they said, no, we think it means a lot more than that. We think it means that everywhere government is, religion can't be. Well, government's everywhere. We think it means separation of church and state. We think it means that if you're offended by religion, you can bring a lawsuit. Well, you can't bring a lawsuit because you're offended, but only in the last 50 years if you're offended by religion. So we've seen nativity scenes come down at Christmas, menorahs come down in Hanukkah, 10 Commandments put in the closet. If there's any sort of religious activity at school, it's like there's a fire. Why? Because any of this stuff is in the Constitution? No, because of the Lemon case. So 4 years ago, we were at the Supreme Court representing a veterans memorial that had been put up almost 100 years ago by mothers who lost their sons in World War I. And the American Humanists brought a lawsuit, said you can't have this cross on government property, it violates Lemon. And then one of the judges in the oral argument at the Court of Appeals said, why don't we just cut the arms off the cross? That way nobody will be offended and we won't have to tear it down. 2-1, they said it was unconstitutional. So we went to the Supreme Court and we argued not only should you protect this veterans memorial, but it's time to get rid of Lemon. It's been cited 7,000 times. It's been used to crush religious freedom for the last 50 years, and it's not what the Constitution says. Well, we won the case 7-2. But more importantly, 5-4, they said, we're not going to follow Lemon. They didn't reverse it, but they said, we're not going to follow it. And then in Coach Kennedy case, we looked at this and we said, this is a big case. I mean, there's never been a case in the country over the rights of teachers or coaches and their faith at school. And we're like, we can't go for the push for the Lemon argument, because that's like going for a grand slam when we can win with a single, and there's millions of people at risk here. So we didn't push that argument really hard. Midway through the oral argument, out of nowhere, Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Gorsuch start saying, I think it's time we get rid of that Lemon case. And we're in shock. Our eyes are... And sure enough, the decision comes down, and right at the beginning of the decision, they say Lemon is over. 7,000 citations gone. Okay? Everywhere that crosses went down, they go back up. Everywhere that 10 Commandments were put in the closet, they pull back out. Okay? Nativity scenes, you can't have them. Yes, you can. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And the problem is people don't know. So we've actually got an education project that's real important called Restoring Faith in America, to let people know that in every community they can restore faith in their community. And so it's rfia.org is where the information on that. But it's one of these things where everybody can do it themselves. We've already won the case. It's just a matter of them doing it in their community. And so that's a huge deal. Now, some people say, this stuff is all over. You won your cases, so it's over. No, what happens, the enemy, when you win a case, will try to come in and get your case narrowly defined so that it has little impact. But the flip side to this is we've got a huge opportunity to expand all of these wins way beyond what people understand. I mean, for instance, take the situation I mentioned with Groff, the guy who wanted to not work on his Sabbath, and that whole standard got changed for religious freedom in the workplace. Think of what that's going to mean in these pronoun cases where people are fired for using the wrong pronoun. But those have to be litigated to expand that protection. Okay, the Carson case, which I mentioned about school choice, it really wasn't just about school choice. If you read the opinion, it says, look, the basis of our decision is that anytime there's a government program that provides benefits in a generalized fashion, you can never exclude the recipients because they're doing it in a religious way. Think of what that means for Teen Challenge, who's changing people's lives, but was like, but you can't talk about Jesus in this government program. Think of what that means for homeless missions in every community. You can see how this expansion of protection and really the end of these attacks on religious freedom. And I'll give you one. Coach Kennedy, I mentioned, there are multitudes of things we can do. But let's just take one. Somebody saw that case, and in Texas they said, let's pass a law in Texas that allows there to be a chaplain in every public school in the state of Texas. That's now the law in the state of Texas. So there are endless possibilities. So I just mentioned this to you. I challenge you, be involved in this in whatever way God leads you. And a simple way is, I think I've got a QR code. Some of you look at this and go, this is not one of those things that you look at long enough and you see a picture of Jesus, right? This is where you pull out your phone and you do the camera, and it will allow you to sign up, because if you don't know about these cases, you can't pray. Number one, and we need prayer. This is a spiritual battle. And number two, the great thing you can do is educate other people, because they don't know about these victories. They don't know that things are changed. They're living 50 years ago. You can change everything. I had one of our attorneys bust into my office right after we won the Coach Kennedy case, and he said, I need $20 million. I said, excuse me? He said, I need $20 million. We've got to go into all 7,000 of these case communities, and we've got to reopen these cases, and we've got to show them that everything's changed. I said, no, we've already won. We just have to have people know, and they can go in their own community and change everything. And that's where we are, and you can be the people educating other people to do that. So we also have a booth out back, but get involved, do what you can, but just realize there's a lot of really bad things going on right now in the country. But this is not this is a move of God. And a lot of times, we try to create a plan and ask God to approve our plan. I think it's much better to see where God's already moving and say, I'm going to get with your plan. I'm going to get on your train. And that's exactly what's happening in the religious freedom arena. And I think we're just at the beginning. So thank you for being with me. God bless you.
All right. Wow. I mean, was that an incredible speech or what? My stepfather, he loved Kelly. He was there on the second row, and he said Kelly was his favorite speaker of the whole conference. I mean, he was pretty amazing. So Coach Joe and Denise Kennedy will be with us this year, September 27 and 28. So that case that Kelly just laid out for you in that video and podcast, the man who did it with him. Yes, you have to have the lawyer and the law firm, but you also have to have the plaintiff that's willing to lay down their life and for, I think, 9 years, fight a case all the way to the Supreme Court. So come to our conference, September 27 and 28, $55. That's it. Go to thececonference.org, thececonference.org, or christiansengage.org. Go to our homepage. You can connect to our conference website. Watch the promo video about last year. This is an amazing time, guys. Amazing time. So come. Get on a plane, fly to Dallas-Fort Worth. If you're in Texas, I know it's like, a huge country, right? A huge country. Just get in your car and drive, or get on a Southwest airline flight and get to Dallas Love Field and come to the conference. We want to see you. This is our gathering place. This is the place where we get recharged. Some of you elected officials or candidates out there or people that have been involved for years need to come to this conference to get refreshed and to remember why you're doing it. We have one elected official comes every year to our conference, and he almost quit. He almost quit right before he came to our first conference, and he got so blessed that he comes every year as a place of revival and renewal to remind himself why he's doing what he's doing. So I want you to come to the conference, support Christians Engaged. This is a very, 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 very important time. There's no other time more important than right now, because we have to raise the funds to reach 1 million Christians before the presidential election. We can't reach the 1 million Christians on November 5th. We have to reach the 1 million Christians before the beginning of October. I need you to help us. Come to the conference, sponsor the conference, support Christians Engaged, go online, give the largest donation you can give, become a monthly partner with us. If you can do $25 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month, $250 a month, $1,000 a month, whatever you can do, whatever God has given in your hands to help save America, to impact the well-being of America, to activate Christians, we need your help. So consider partnering with Christians Engaged. Consider being a sponsor at the conference. Consider coming to the conference. And let's protect religious liberty for generations to come. We love you guys. I'll see you back here next week. Thank you so much for joining us for this incredible podcast. What a time we've had. We love you so much. We love being in your life. Have you subscribed? Have you shared this with your family and friends? Please subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, wherever you get your audio or video pods. We need your help. This mission is undergirded by individuals just like you that support this ministry monthly, annually, and whenever you think about us, to be able to reach over 1 million Christians in the next 2 years. That's our goal. We want to empower 1 million Christians around America to pray, vote, and engage regularly. Will you help us? We're here to do that, and we need your help. I want to say thank you to our partners at The Stream. What an incredible online publication put out by James Robison and Life Outreach International, as we come together across denominational lines as believers to discern what God's saying about the news of the day and to hear from different viewpoints. Check out The Stream, make it your homepage, and get on their email list. This product is amazing. Also, our partners at Edify app, put out by Christian Post. This podcast app is a convergence of Bible teachers around America. We're excited to be a part of Edify app. Check out all their other podcasts. Thank you so much again for caring about this nation. We're here to help you pray, vote, and engage. We'll see you next week.